Do we need to rent a love hotel for that now? She was like, yeah, why not? They do it until 2 in the morning, but when they yell, apparently it's a tough game, they just start screaming. People come there like it's some kind of PvP zone where Japanese laws don't apply. Guys offer all kinds of substances and girls providing different types of services. But when I walked in, there was dirt on the floor and cockroaches all over the walls. My friends were in Kabukicho for New Year's and there was a serious fight. One of them was almost arrested. It's impossible to go to Kabukicho without getting an offer to buy substances or hire a girl. Young Yakuza behave rudely. They're impolite and arrogant. There's strictness in everything, absolute obedience to the boss. Even if your boss doesn't understand something, you just have to agree that you did it wrong even though you might actually be right.
Hey friends, welcome to the Holly Lolly channel. Today, we have a guest who lives in Japan and won't be telling you about sushi and cherry blossoms. This will be a real talk about dating Japanese girls, gamer-neighbor garbage wars, and late-night adventures in Kabukicho. Friends, this is the Japan you won't hear about in tourist guides. So, let's meet our guest, Denise. Hi Denise, tell us, how long have you been living in Japan?
Hey everyone, tomorrow marks exactly 1 year since I came to Japan. Specifically to Tokyo.
Have you had time to make any Japanese friends? Viewers are usually very curious to learn what real Japanese people are like.
I interact with Japanese people mostly when dealing with everyday matters. As for friendships, I'm really hoping to make some. I had some experiences during training sessions where we talked like friends with a few guys, but unfortunately, we didn't develop close relationships. I'm hoping that's still ahead of me.
We hope so too. Tell us, where do you meet Japanese girls? In real life or mostly on dating apps?
My Japanese level isn't high enough yet, so it's hard to meet them in person. That's why I have to rely on dating apps. Tinder, which everyone knows, works very strangely here. I can't recommend it as a useful tool because most girls have ramen or sweets in their profile pictures. Also, neither I nor anyone I know has had a positive experience on Tinder because the girls there seem a bit cautious around foreigners. But there's another app called Bumble. I'm not advertising it, but I can recommend it because there are quite a few Japanese girls there who are open to meeting foreigners and are willing to chat.
So I take it you've gone on dates with Japanese girls? How do they show affection in public?
I've been on a few dates with Japanese girls, though not as many as I might have liked. One time we went to a craft beer bar. She was a fan of craft beer, which made the evening not exactly cheap for me. Our interaction was short-lived. Another time I had been on 3 dates with a girl and I thought maybe it was time to kiss her. So we were in a bar on the second floor and no one else was there. I approached it casually, but she turned me down, saying it was a public place and absolutely not okay to do that here. Even though we were alone and to call the staff, you'd have to press a button. They wouldn't just show up. So I asked her if I'd need to rent a love hotel for that, and she didn't say no. Honestly, I was fine with that because it moved our relationship forward. From then on, things went to a different level between us.
What are Japanese girls like in terms of everyday life?
I can't really judge over a long period yet because we meet about once every 2 weeks. But I really liked the fact that when we rented an apartment, she promised to cook me a traditional Japanese dinner. And while she was cooking, she wasn't just focused on the food, she also made sure my beer glass was full. That was a bit surprising to me because I had offered to help. But not only did she do everything herself, she also made sure I was comfortable and had everything I needed.
Wow. So, for a serious relationship, would you choose a Japanese woman or a foreigner? Judging by your previous answer, probably a Japanese woman, but what do you think?
I'd say it surprised me, but I can't say I was exactly impressed by it. I think a relationship should be balanced, and in that situation, I felt kind of obligated because of how she treated me. So, it depends on the person. I wouldn't say it absolutely has to be a Japanese woman or the opposite. If you're comfortable with someone, I think it doesn't matter where they're from. In some ways, Japanese women are just different, and it's interesting to be with them, but I wouldn't take any kind of radical position on this.
You live in a dormitory. Can you tell us what that is? I've Googled it several times and I think I've seen it, but I'm still not sure what it is. I think the audience would also be curious to know.
Basically, we call it a dorm, but actually, in a dormitory, you have your own room, which includes a toilet and a kitchen. The size is usually about 15 to 16 square meters. Overall, it's quite convenient, especially for students at language schools, because dormitories are usually located within reasonable distance of the schools. There are pros and cons. There are also share houses. A share house is a place where you only have your own room and the rest of the space is shared. The plus side of a share house is that when you move in, you don't have to pay an additional move-in fee. But still, having my own kitchen and toilet is really important to me, so I'm willing to pay extra for that.
Can I ask how much you pay per month? Or is that a personal question?
It's not a personal question. I recently renewed my contract, and for 3 months it was 210,000 yen. Then the next 3 months will cost 180,000 yen. So it comes out to 60,000 yen per month, plus utilities, and the contract has to be renewed every 6 months.
What kind of everyday issues or problems do you face in the dormitory?
It really depends on the dormitory, but in mine, there's a problem with trash. You can only throw out household garbage on Tuesdays and Fridays between 7:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning. And when you have classes in the afternoon starting at 1:10 p.m., you have to wake up early just to take out the trash. In most dormitories, you can put your trash in special containers the night before, and it'll be picked up in the morning. Unfortunately, we can't do that in ours.
You also mentioned something about noisy neighbors. I once had the police called on us because my small children ran a few times from the kitchen to the bathroom. That was around 9 p.m., and by 9:20 the police were already at our door. But you said your neighbors are noisy. Tell us about that, because I know people in Japan are very sensitive to noise.
Dormitories are a bit different because everyone there is a foreigner, students at a language school. So it just so happens that my room is between 2 students from China. These guys play online games together and they do it until 2 in the morning. I'm a pretty calm person when it comes to noise, but when their game gets intense, they start yelling. It's impossible to sleep through it. I knocked on one guy's door. He didn't open it, but was quiet after that. The other one did open the door, apologized a lot, but the next day it all happened again.
I take it that's because they're not Japanese. If Japanese people lived there, it would probably be a different story.
I think so. I've heard many times that in Tokyo there are even videos where someone drops a plastic fork by accident and neighbors immediately bang on the walls from all sides. So I believe that if Japanese people were living there, it would be a completely different situation.
It's really interesting to hear your opinion. How different are the Japanese during the day compared to those who come out at night? I'd love to hear your thoughts on Japan's nightlife. How safe is it overall? And what are people like in the Kabukicho area? Have you walked around there, and what can you tell us?
Kabukicho is definitely a Tokyo landmark that you have to visit. People go there like it's a kind of PvP zone where anything goes, where Japanese laws don't seem to apply. Guys offer all sorts of substances and different types of escort services. It really feels lawless. In everyday life, Japanese people are very reserved, very organized, very polite. But there, it's like all that just disappears, as if political correctness falls off them. It's a very unique place.
And what do you talk about on your channel regarding Japan?
I actually started filming when I first came to Japan in 2022 in Kobe. I was shocked by the dormitory there. I didn't expect it to be a penthouse or anything, but when I walked in, there was dirt on the floor and walls and a ton of cockroaches. It was my cry from the heart. That's why I started a YouTube channel. Now I talk about interactions with Japanese people, about parties, about trips. I share the things that surprise me and what I like about Japan.
Thank you so much. And tell us, how do drunk Japanese people act when they're out partying at night? You know, in our countries, we're used to drunk people being dangerous and aggressive. What are the Japanese like when they've stayed too long at the bar after work?
I can't speak for everyone, but sometimes they do get pretty lively. I wouldn't say they're aggressive, but they do push each other around. Maybe it's in a friendly way, but I can't fully judge the situation. However, my friends were in Kabukicho for New Year's, and there was a serious fight. They got caught up in it, and one of them almost got arrested. So there might be a different level of interaction between Japanese people there. They're not always sweet and polite. Also, not just in Kabukicho. At many stations on Friday nights, you can see drunk Japanese people passed out.
You said you've been to Kabukicho. Have you personally been offered any illegal substances or adult services? I know the target audience is mostly young guys looking for adventure, so it's interesting. Were you ever approached?
It's impossible to go to Kabukicho without being offered drugs or women. When young guys go there, people constantly come up to them, usually black guys, offering all kinds of substances. And occasionally some guy runs up saying he knows a great place to have a good time with young ladies. I haven't used either service, at least not yet, but I can't say I'm very interested in that. I wouldn't recommend it.
We're all for a healthy lifestyle. Please never try anything like that. We're just sharing this to inform people that these things do happen, and that not all of Japan is perfectly safe. And what do you know about the modern Yakuza, and how do Japanese people feel about them?
I haven't asked a lot of people about this, but I find the topic very interesting. I asked some girls what they think about the Yakuza and what they know. Most of them had never encountered them. One girl worked at a bar, and she said sometimes Yakuza would come in. She said the younger ones behaved rudely. They were impolite and arrogant. But the ones with status were respectful and polite. No one ever had issues with them. I believe that nowadays, many of them have already taken high positions in government, just like before when they were directly connected to it. But back then, you could still tell who they were. Now, probably not anymore. What surprises me is how negatively Japanese people feel about the Yakuza. I understand that they're a criminal organization, but they have helped the Japanese state more than once. For example, in 1995, during the major earthquake in Kobe, the Yakuza were partially responsible for the recovery efforts. So in a way, yes, for their own benefit, but they do help the country. However, you can't go to most onsens if you have tattoos, unless it's a special onsen where tattoos are allowed. And you can't go to the beach unless your tattoos are covered with clothing.
So, you have tattoos. Have there been situations where you weren't allowed to enter somewhere because of that? Or maybe you didn't even try to go? Or on the contrary, have you gone places and everything was fine?
That's actually the reason why I can't go to onsens with friends in Tokyo. There are tattoo-friendly places, but unfortunately, they're not always the ones everyone wants to visit. You could say I've experienced this kind of discrimination. By Japanese standards, I have quite a lot of tattoos, so I have to avoid such places. I also can't go to the pool. It's not that I absolutely wanted to go, but the fact that I can't go makes me feel a bit uncomfortable.
For example, I've seen people at pools with bandages on. If it's a small tattoo, they just cover it. Do you have a lot of tattoos? Would it be impossible to cover them up?
I have a full chest tattoo and a full sleeve. A bandage wouldn't be enough.
Denise, you mentioned in our messages that you want to visit Aokigahara Forest. What's behind that? I personally feel very negative energy from that place and wouldn't go there. Why do you want to?
Well, it's a very atmospheric place, and I'm a big fan of the horror genre, both in films and games. I've already been to that forest twice, and actually my friend and I are planning to go again next Friday. There's something mystical about it. Unfortunately, I'm not very good at geology, but the idea is that the ground there is volcanic, and it has created caves. When the wind blows strongly, it sounds like some huge demonic creature is howling. My friend and I were there in winter at the end of 2022, and there was absolutely no one around. As it started to get dark, I was joking about ghosts at first, but when we separated for a while and I was left alone, I suddenly felt really scared. It's a very atmospheric place, especially because many Japanese people ended their lives there. And according to Japanese mythology, people who end their lives unnaturally become yurei, ghosts. They become bound to the place where they died and wait there for travelers.
Why do you think so many people in Japan are prone to depression?
I think Japanese society demands a lot from people. Besides having to work hard and often work overtime, they can't afford to make mistakes. They always have to think about how they appear to others, how they represent their family, for example. They have no right to fail. That's just my opinion, but I think they're constantly under pressure. And being here myself, I understand that if I don't manage to find a job within a certain time frame, I won't have any options left to continue living in Japan. It's not that I would fall into deep depression, but it still weighs on me. There's an awareness that in order to stay in this society, you have to meet certain standards and really make an effort. And the Japanese live like that their whole lives. They always have to be at their best. So I think that's what causes depression for many.
I'm really curious to know your opinion on the Japanese mindset. How close is it to you personally? Can you fully accept it? Because you've said that you want to stay and live in Japan. I talk to people who have been here for 15 to 20 years, and they say that you either fully embrace the mindset and start thinking like a Japanese person, or if something doesn't sit right with you, cracks will eventually appear, and you'll end up leaving. What do you think? How foreign is it to you, or could you also become like a Japanese person?
It's extremely difficult to become like a Japanese person because a long time ago I switched to internet marketing specifically so I could work remotely. So so I wouldn't have to wake up early and so I could plan my day the way I want, how I like it. I thought I would never change that until I found out about the opportunity to come to Japan. Japan is the only country for which I'm willing to break my principles and try to wake up early, commute by subway, which, by the way, I don't really like either. Of course, the subway in Tokyo is great, but there are so many people, and that really makes me uncomfortable. So a lot of aspects of the Japanese mentality seem difficult for me to adopt and live by. I'm still getting used to it. I'm not even sure yet whether I'll be able to manage it, because honestly, I thought I would live here for a year and then I'd understand. But the thing is, I've spent this year as a student. I study and work remotely. I haven't worked a regular job yet, and I still can't really picture myself doing that. So for me, it seems difficult. But as they say, nothing is impossible for a person. So I want to try, and we'll see how it goes.
What specific qualities do you find hard to accept?
I'd probably say the strictness about everything. For example, the requirement to obey your boss unconditionally without any opportunity to express your own opinion, even when your boss is wrong. I've heard this from friends, I haven't seen it myself. But sometimes your supervisor may be incompetent in some area, and yet you still have to say that you were wrong, even though you might be right. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Again, I need to try it. But on the other hand, I hope to get into an international advertising agency and continue my career in digital marketing there. That would definitely be easier for me than fully adapting to the working style of a Japanese company.
Many people want to know, if they want to move to Japan, how much would it cost? How much is language school? How much does living cost? Maybe you can give a rough estimate of the expenses for one person to give an idea to those dreaming of moving to Japan. What are the financial aspects of moving? I have a large family, so it's harder for me to give the cost per person.
If you're ready to save money, then spending around 10,000 yen per month on food is possible. But of course, that means eating pretty much the same things. In general, I spend significantly more on weekends because of trips, going out with friends, and all that takes quite a lot of money. On weekdays, I sometimes buy ready-made meals. Other times, I cook simple dishes. Rice is basically the main ingredient I use in almost everything. As for the cost of school, it depends on the school, but mine costs 348,000 yen for 6 months. As I mentioned earlier, there are also utility bills. Altogether, it comes out to about 80,000 yen on average. But again, it depends on how often you cook, whether you use the air conditioner for heating or cooling, and so on. It's hard to give an exact number because it really depends on, for example, how you spend your weekends. If you're an introvert who prefers reading manga or watching anime and enjoys that kind of leisure, it'll definitely be cheaper than traveling to nearby regions, especially since transportation in Japan is quite expensive, and naturally, entertainment always costs money. You need to assess your own needs from the start and figure out what exactly you want to do here. Of course, I'd love to live large here because I want to enjoy Japan. It's such an interesting country in terms of culture, food, and entertainment, so I wouldn't recommend coming here if you're barely getting by financially. It will be tough.
Thank you so much, and thank you friends for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next videos.